Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a special comparison, 2022 Toyota GR86, which is mine, and we have a 2019 Nissan 370Z NISMO. If you were to buy this used on the market today and to buy this new, it'd actually be a pretty similar price, around low 30s. And let's start with the tried and true, the familiar, and see how she compares. Now, for those who don't know, I've had this car since July of 2022, so over a year now, and I've put close to 7,000 miles. I have been loving it. We're gonna take traction control off. Now, this car is mostly stock. We have camber bolts in the front, and we have Kumho V730 tires, which are very tired. We've done, I think, about 10 track days on them, so they're at the end of their life, lower grip now, heat cycled. But in terms of the actual driving feel and engagement, that's it. And the reason we're using this car as a baseline is that regardless of price, it is just so good. So good. Oh, the rotation on throttle. Regardless of price, I mean, 28 grand is what I bought this car for new MSRP last year. This is the base trim, not the premium. All the inputs are dialed in, the chassis nice and taut, very responsive and communicative. This does have EPS, but for an EPS, it is quite good. Not the best EPS I've used. Porsche definitely does EPS better. The first gen car also definitely did EPS better. I owned the 2013 Scion FRS for 9 years before I bought this, and obviously to buy this car after owning that car for 9 years, you must really love the platform and see the value in it, because the two are so similar. Definitely more similar than different, but this is an upgrade in most ways. Steering not being one of them. It's a little bit too light, has a strange on-center feel, and feedback is a little bit diminished compared to that first gen. But that power bump was so welcome. Still not a musical engine by any means, but the power delivery, classic naturally aspirated, and it is more rewarding to rev out. You don't have that pesky torque dip, at least not to the same degree as in that first gen. Manual transmission, a joy to use. Light clutch with the easy engagement bite point. I just love the way this thing rotates with throttle. It's just so good. And the car's not perfect by any means. The throttle tip-in is far too aggressive, as an example. That's one way they can make it feel more peppy than the prior gen. But I will be trying a product to adjust the throttle mapping, see how much that helps. I'll keep you guys posted. Subscribe if you want to see how that goes. A big part of the magic of this car is that they kept the weight down. It's right around 2,800 pounds. Front engine, rear wheel drive with a very low center of gravity and a taut chassis. And when you have that as a foundation, a lot of things just fall into place. God, the way this car just rotates is so good. So good. And with that as the benchmark, as the baseline, let's see how it compares to the 370Z NISMO. Time to hop in to the 370Z NISMO. I do think, with regards to styling, they did a good job. They targeted it up in the right ways. I think it's definitely sportier, more aggressive, without being overdone and overstyled. Although I'm personally not the biggest fan of the rear taillights. I think the 350Z had more timeless rear taillights, but those wide arches, I mean, the silhouette of this car is very classic. My soccer coach in middle school got the 350Z when it first came out, and I thought he and the car were just the coolest things ever. And the way it sounded, that VQ engine, every time coming up to soccer practice, I thought these were the coolest cars. And this, of course, being the successor to the 350Z. more similar than different. I have done a 370Z convertible review in the past. You can see that on the channel, link in the description. This is start-stop, but you do have a key, which you can place right there. That's nice, so you don't have to keep it in your pocket. This is an automatic. I would personally have chosen the manual, but as you guys know, I'm kind of a manual diehard. And the interior is very driver-oriented. Got the gauges facing you as the driver. I do like that, although this does not telescope, and I wish it did, when you move this up and down, the gauges come with it as a single module, which is very cool. The left-hand side, you have this gauge, which is very old school, and a lot of people complain that it's too dated, but remember, this is an old school kind of car, and I think the gauges with the MPG, and you can actually change the display, I think that it's actually pretty cool. I enjoy it. So what we're gonna do is turn traction control off, and we're gonna see how it drives. All right, column-mounted shifters. People feel very strongly, usually one way or the other. I personally prefer steering wheel, because if I'm turning and I need to shift right now, I'm like, oh my god, where are the... See, I hit the windshield wipers because I'm trying to find the shifter, the paddle. Ooh, this, the owner mentioned the steering does kind of creak and shift a little bit with G-forces, which is a little bit unnerving. See, I want to downshift, but ooh, my left hand is over there, so I really do not like column mounted. Oh, naturally aspirated 3.7 liter V6 engine pushing out 350 horsepower. Although I have heard mixed numbers. Some say it's 339 horsepower, but it has 276 pound-feet of torque. But keep in mind, the car does weigh around 3,500 pounds. It's actually 34 and some change. It comes out to around 70 or 80 pounds lighter than the new Z that just came out. But it's definitely a chunky monkey. Definitely significantly heavier than the GR86. But the GR86 is also down on power. That one's only around 230 horsepower with a naturally aspirated Boxer 4 engine. Now with the Nismo, you are getting some upgraded styling and aero bits on the exterior. You're getting some changes to the suspension and brakes, and you're making a bit more power. Now as to whether that's worth the extra cheddar for this over the regular Z is something you have to decide. My initial impressions would be that you can probably get a base Z and then, using the money saved, actually modify it to your heart's content and still have some money left over. I do like that we have hydraulic steering, and compared to that other Z that I was driving, this steering feels way better. Way better. The feedback... The feedback and the road textures are coming through no problem. And I feel like it's actually better than the GR86. I was definitely expecting the opposite, because I remember that last convertible Z I drove had pretty numb steering, but this is feeling fantastic. Very direct, getting a lot of feedback and texture in the road. As I'm turning, loading up those front tires, I can feel that through the wheel. The brakes are not very confidence-inspiring. Not a lot of initial bite. Feel kind of squishy and vague, actually. Owner did say this is entirely stock. So, oh, there we go, a little bit of rotation. You can feel the mass, though. You can feel that there's a bit of a... It's not as responsive. There's a bit of a lag to the inputs and to the movements because of that extra mass. This car only has 21,000 miles. Whew. Yeah, this steering is really good. I wasn't expecting that. Transmission is kind of lazy and slow to respond, though. I mean, it's a torque converter, and there are definitely faster and better torque converters out there. I'm looking at UZF 8-speed. Well, let's test this here. As I hit the brakes, downshift. It's not terribly slow, but there are moments when I wish that it was a little bit more responsive and a little bit more aggressive. I mean, if you're trying to be this sporty car, you don't need to give me the smoothest shifts, right? Give me a little bit of a jerk back into my seat when I'm gunning it hard, at least. The car definitely needs some different brake pads. I think that would very much elevate the driving experience. I don't feel as comfortable pushing it right now on this road, in large part because of the brakes, actually. The VQ engine from Nissan is very polarizing. I think that it sounds great. I mean, it definitely sounds a lot better than the GR86, but let's be real, that's not really saying much. The interior in this car is actually a downgrade, I would say. And people often complain about the Twins interior as is. It just feels very dated, because this car is dated. This came out in what, like 2010? Something around that? And this is very much based on the 350Z, and that car came out 10 years before that. So they have this oval motif, and you see that even in the new Z. It just feels a little bit old. This is very, very dated. I would like to cover that up with something, because that is possibly the most dating part of the car. You have a CD player. I do like the red accents. You got the center marker right here, the red on the seats, and the seats, they actually look fantastic. I think styling-wise, they definitely nailed it. Comfort-wise, they're pretty good. They're not bad by any means. Now you're probably wondering how this compares to the new Z. And compared to the new Z, this is definitely down on power, right? The new Z, it does weigh about 100 pounds more, but you don't notice that as much because the power bump is quite substantial. That is, of course, a turbocharged engine. So you're not getting the same naturally aspirated character that you do here. This does make peak power right close to redline, so it rewards you as you rev it out. And the interior in the new Z is leagues better than this. And sure, you still have that oval motif. But the materials, the styling, the design, the fit and finish, it feels like a premium $50,000 car, whereas this, it feels like it's a couple brackets lower in the cost category. And I mean, it is, but when this car was new, it was what, 46 grand? It was pretty close. And now if you're buying it used, you're looking at low to mid 30s, maybe even high 30s, depending on that specific example. And at that price point, there are other cars that give you a nicer cabin to be in. Sitting position here is very driver focused, very appropriate for a car like this. I'm not feeling like I'm too high. I have decent visibility, although the rear 3/4 is definitely limited. But the steering, man, the steering's the highlight for me. Although the Alcantara, I mean, it's fine right now at 21,000 miles. It'll probably get kind of nasty unless the owner is very diligent in the upkeep. There we go. Slight rotation on throttle. That's what we like. This is surprising. I'm enjoying this more than I expected. What was that? I upshifted and that was interesting. So these paddles also feel great. I do like the actual engagement with them. It's a very positive engagement, not too long of a travel, nice tactile feel to them. But again, I prefer steering wheel mounted over column mounted for the reasons mentioned previously. In terms of suspension, it is a little bit crashy, if I'm being honest. I don't think that they tuned this as well as they could have. And granted, of course, they're going for a stiffer, sportier kind of ride. But there are other cars with, I'm looking at Porsches in particular, obviously different price bracket, but Porsches, Lotuses, they can do the sporty suspension in a much more balanced way, and of course that comes with the different price bracket. I'm sure some people will be upset on that comment, which is fine. Woohoo! The steering is so good! So good! Why is the steering so much better than that other 370Z? Is it the suspension changes? Is it the tires? You do get these special wheels with the Nismo. I think they look fantastic. They really did the best job they could with the 370Z and tarting it up. The 370Z I don't think is the most beautiful car to begin with, but they made it definitely look better with the changes. I'm not sure why I guess maybe there's a gap between gears, and when I'm upshifting, as you saw right there and previously, the revs actually go up more because there's less resistance between gears, I'm guessing. That's kind of strange behavior. You know, the cliche is that this is a Japanese muscle car, and that's said for a reason, right? It's heavy, it is powerful, but it's not a delicate, nimble car like the GR86, BRZ, the Miata, the S2000. It definitely has some muscle car DNA, but the steering in this is definitely better than any muscle car I've driven. I am very impressed by this hydraulic rag, and that's one of the benefits of driving a more old school car. You get some of that old school technology like hydraulic steering over electric power assist, and that's something that I very much value. Now, obviously, between this and the new Z is far more expensive, and I think right now the dealerships are still marking them up to the moon. And for that reason, it's very difficult to compare the two. This is the predecessor, but it's also half the price, or close to half the price. And you're getting most of the driving experience. The reason being that the new Z is largely based on the old Z. And sure, you have a better engine and you have tuning changes with the suspension and things like that, but they drive quite similarly. This one is stiffer than the new Z because this is the Nismo, and the new Z is going more for a GT feel. And overall, I would say that this, at least compared to the convertible base Z, is so much better. It's hard to believe it's even the same car. It's just so different and much more enjoyable to drive. Now, I would be curious how this compares to a regular hardtop base Z, and if you do have one of those, you want me to review it, and you're in the SoCal, Las Vegas area, then do reach out on JubbalOnCars.com. We have a form there that you can fill out. But let me know what you guys think. The 370Z NISMO, the new Z, the GR86, which one would you pick? I would say between the GR86 and this car, I would choose the GR86, but that's because it plays more to my preferences for cars, but I totally would have no problem with someone choosing this car, and I totally understand why they would choose this car, because that car, it's more for the light, nimble, tossable, you want to get it sideways going around every single turn. But the steering there isn't as good, right? That does have a manual transmission. I wonder if this was manual transmission, maybe I would prefer this. I'm not sure. But this has better steering, it has more power, it has a little bit more of a dated interior, actually a much more dated interior, but has a more special engine. It is heavier, but some people care more about acceleration than they do about dancing with the car at the limit in the corners. So it depends on your preferences. They're both fantastic vehicles. I'm impressed. Let me know what you guys think with a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.